The Tudor Cup by Neil Munro. Part 1. When the Tudor Cup was sold at Sotheby's in the year 1870 for the sum of £7,000, the fall of the auctioneer's hammer echoed round the world, at all events round the world of men who gather bibelots. There were only 3 such treasures in existence. This one, now destined for America, which was understood to have come from Holland, another in the National Collection in Paris, and a third in Scotland, the property of Sir Gilbert Quare, whose ancestor had acquired it 150 years before by winning a game of cards in a London coffee-house. Among those people who were profoundly moved by this record price for a quite unimpressive-looking battered silver tankard was the firm of Harris and Hirsch, the Bond Street art dealers, and 2 days after the sale in London, Mr. Harris hastened up to Scotland, quartered himself at an inn in Peebles, and pushed some discreet inquiries. Sir Gilbert Quare, he discovered, was in a state approaching penury, living an almost hermit life in the house of Quare beside the Tweed, with a deaf old housekeeper, a half-daft maid who never came out of doors, and an equally recluse man, whose duty it was to act as guide to the numerous tourists who flocked to the house for the sake of its place in ballad minstrelsy and its antiquarian collection. If the gossips of Peebles could be trusted, the baronet lived upon the shilling fees his guide extracted from the visitors, dodging himself from room to room of his mansion, for fear of encountering Americans and English, whom he hated, resenting their intrusion on his privacy, but counting their numbers eagerly as from his window he watched them coming up the long yew avenue. Harris, the Bond Street dealer, modestly bent on hiding his own importance in the commercial world of art, for the nonce, a simple English gentleman with a taste for miniatures, called next day at the house of Quare, whose crenellated tower looked arrogantly over ancient woods and fields, where lambs were bleating piteously, and men were walking along the furrows, scattering seed. The avenue of yews, which led from the highway into Peebles through neglected and dishevelled grounds, brought the Bond Street dealer to the forlorn facade of the mansion and the great main door. He rapped upon the iron knocker. The sound reverberated as through a vault, with hollow echoes such as come from vacant chambers. Far back in the dwelling's core there was a clatter of something fallen, but no one answered the summons of the visitor, and having rapped in vain...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?